Hi everyone. Today I want to talk to you just about the first time you open Maya up. So when you open up Maya, you're going to get basically a look like this. Okay, so you're going to have, it's going to be overwhelming at first for you. So for you animators that are out there, or if you're not animators, then this might not apply to you so much. But this is just for animators that are starting off in their careers. Basically, from my 15-20 years of experience over the years, I've developed some workflows just to make the painful process of working in Maya a little bit more comfortable. So let's begin. Basically, what you're going to be spending most of your time doing, if you've noticed, Maya has this little window at the top left here called, it starts off at modeling, rigging, animation. So you're going to be spending most of your time in animation. And the top menu changes into different things. I've got some extra plugins that I've loaded by default, so you probably won't have those two there, so don't worry about them. But Maya will normally start off at the modeling stage, so you'd have the modeling window tab open, for example. Now, in Maya, you've got these. It's quite hard to read it actually, but there are some little windows in here that let me just check this is working. Okay, sorry. So yes, you've got these little windows that are these little icons here, and basically what they do is it's hard to notice it, and without being taught about this, you won't know that there's stuff hiding behind it. So just so you know, there's extra menus that are hidden behind these settings up here. So have a little look and make sure that you are aware of all the options that are available to you. If you get confused or you're not sure where something is or it looks different, then it's probably hidden in one of these windows here. So let's move on. So basically how I animate is I can't work with a timeline that is so small like this, and with this this frame number thing that hovers over. I think it is one of the most annoying things that Autodesk has ever done. So I know that there's a script for this to get rid of that frame number helper, but for now, let me just explain to you about where to change things. Okay, so let's go down to this guy over here, this running man he's running away from something chasing him, the animation preferences. If we open up that, you're going to get a pop-up window here. Okay, now to change the height of our time slider, it's important to go into the settings tab on the left hand side and then down to the time slider area. Here I normally have the height of it at 2, so I'll lift it up to 2, and then I will definitely not play back every frame. I don't know why this is set at default. I don't think a lot of the Autodesk guys that design Autodesk don't have Maya animators in mind, over my 20 years of experience anyway. But that should be set to 24 frames per second. If you wanted to change your frame rate, you can change it up here. So the time slider at the moment is at 24. It's just standard, but you can change it to 25 or 30 frames per second up here, and your time slider will change. You've got the playback start and end sections. So that is in here. So that you've got a 1 here and a 1 here. This is a bit confusing if you start off in Maya. You're probably thinking, well, what is the time slider? I don't understand it. Well, in here we've got the first number. So this is frame 1. Maya doesn't start on frame 0. We start at frame 1. And then this area is basically the area that you would be working in, this section. So if you wanted to work on a block of animation that was just in this area that you wanted to focus on, you can squash and stretch this inner slider, and it will take the timeline smaller. So if I was to say I wanted to work on that area, it would probably be just this area. But if there's lots and lots and lots of different keys in here, like, and it's really, really messy, what I want to do is I want to then pull the time slider away so that the keyframes get easier to work with on the time slider. You can double click to go backwards and forwards, just so you know. To play back your time slider is Alt and V. Oh, I just typed in something in here. So if you press Alt and V, by default Maya will start to play your scene, which is pretty handy. The next thing I do is I update all my views. This is dependent on your graphics card. If you have a slow graphics card, just use the active view. But this is basically if I'm in a different window. In fact, let's just load a scene. So let's load load the T-Rex walk for demonstration purposes. Okay. Also, you see these pop-up windows here? Again, one of the most annoying things ever if you're very, very familiar with Maya. And to change that, you're in the same window in preferences. You can turn the help option, so interface help, and just turn that off. You don't want to see that. And we don't want to see tool clips, and the help is gone from here as well. See, if I turn it on, it's telling me, hey, just in case you don't really know exactly where you are, this is frame 42, but I know I'm at frame 42 because that's where my mouse is. It says 42 here, and yet Maya thinks it's a cool idea to tell me that I'm also at frame 42. So you can turn all this nonsense off, and hopefully it goes away. Yes, it goes away. So now we have the raptor, and the T-Rex that is in our scene. And if I show the NURBS curves, I can see all my keyframes on the time slider here. See? So what I was talking about by expanding and contracting that time slider is if I double click this, or if I drag it, say I want to work on just 26 to 34, I can really, really pull in, and I can focus on just this area for the animation of the scene. So, but for now, what I wanted to explain to you was I don't like that the keyframes are so thin. This is just a user preference. Again, it's up to you what you want to do. But if I was to put this at, say, 200 frames, in fact, let's do it at 2000. Ooh. Can you see how it's difficult to handle when all these keyframes are together like that? So what I like to do is I normally like to make our key ticks a little bit bigger. And here in the animation preferences window, in settings, animation, back to time slider, and what I like to do is key tick size here. So key tick size, I like to make it at 2 or even 3. Sometimes I just like to make it big so I know where that key is on the time slider. Snapping's good, and I update in all windows. So this is what I was talking about before. Let me just zoom back a bit here, and here we can zoom back a bit. Okay. So if this update is updating view, just the active view, it'll mean that any window that I select, like if I middle mouse and select that window, it'll only update in that window. You see? Maybe in the perspective as well by middle mouse button here and here, and it will update in that window only. So what I want to do is I actually want to update in all windows so that all of them are working together at the same time, so I can see a multiple screen movement of each. And that's just my user preference. Again, it's up to you how you want to have that set up. Now moving up, let's go into the display options, into the manipulators. This is another thing I want to talk about, the manipulators. So if I was to select, let's say, that hip controller and press E for rotation, you can see that the controllers are nice and big. Yours might be a little bit smaller. Let's just see. Yours might be small like that. To make them bigger, you press plus on your keyboard. Plus and minus makes them bigger. But what I'm interested in mostly is the thickness of those lines. I've worked a lot of times with characters with green and red on them, some blue, but I don't like it because I can't, from far away, if I want to rotate something, I'm not sure which is the axis I'm working on. So I like to make that line pick size a little bit bigger and the line thickness size a little bit bigger here. So at about 2, and the line pick size at about 3.8 or 4. Okay, and we can move down. We don't need any of these. They're not super important right now. The display, I normally work in animation in parallel mode. So you get this blue line here, so that Maya caches the time slider. And that's in the settings animation. If you start crashing a lot, which is very, very common with this amazing piece of software, no pun intended, you turn the parallel off and go back to GG, but it's really, really slow. So you need a good, nice graphics card to get that running. Cool, and so the next one is we're at 24 frames per second. In the animation, we're that's what I like to do. So in the by default, I always have weighted tangents on. What is a weighted tangent? If I go to Windows, General Editors, and open up the Animation Editors, and open up the Graph Editor. This is the Graph Editor. So this is where you will see the keyframes on a curve. By the way, what I just did is I pressed Control, Shift, and Alt and right mouse button. Control Shift Alt right mouse button to squash left and right, and the same up and down. Okay, so just remember that. Important. And to zoom in and out is just Alt and right mouse button. You can also scrub with your wheel. What I wanted to talk about. Okay, tangents. So by default, this tangent is okay, because I have set this tangent to be weighted. So if I turn that weighted tangent off, oops, let's turn it off. Let's turn it to non-weighted tangents and break this. Okay, it's locked. Okay, so I can't scale. I can't drag this tangent to have weight on it. Basically, weight means I'm just extending the handles of the tangent itself, and I don't like that when I'm working. I like to be able to select a controller, and let's say I'll grab that controller and I'll say curve weighted tangents, and then I can pull that handle and have influence over what that curve is doing in any of the tangent handles. This was a lot more advanced sort of stuff, but just as a general practice, I keep weighted tangents on by default. Okay, so I turn them on by default. When I create a key, they're on, so I don't have to keep going to the menu, curves, weighted tangents, and doing it that way. Okay, keep going. The auto, normally I would use spline actually, but auto is fine. It's the same really. Spline, auto, tangents, not super important. I do at the moment have the modern graph editor open in this one, but because I'm a dinosaur, I pretty much only work with the classic mode, and hopefully that's still around in the next couple of versions. But I'll show you the difference. So this is the new one, and it's got this time slider at the top, which is super annoying. It should be at the bottom as usual. Maya and Autodesk, they think that it's cool to just change things around, and it's not. So put classic on, and I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to close the graph editor, and let's open it up again. So sorry, the hotkey is not ready yet. So animation editor, graph editor, and this is the old version where you can see the time slider is at the bottom, just like it is at the bottom here of an animator's world that they work in. The time slider is at the bottom, not at the top. It changes the whole way of thinking, yet Autodesk, again, they think they should just change everything because they can. So this is how I work in this old classic version, but you are welcome to work in the new version of the graph editor. Okay, so I'll just load that again for you. And you can see how annoying it is having these, having to go to the window, animation editor, graph editor every time. So we're going to create a hotkey to open this in a minute. Okay, so again, Control Shift Alt right mouse button, squish and squash the graph. Now, all that's perfect. Okay, let's go back into the perspective window and let's tidy this up. This final part of the preferences. One thing that is one of the most important things that you must remember to have is, you've guessed it, autosave. So files and projects, what I want to do is turn on that autosave button, the lifesaver, and turn it on, enable it. I have it every 10 minutes, and some of you by default might be like 40 minutes or something, but I work so fast that in 10 minutes I've done a lot. So it's important for me to have auto saves as often as possible, because Maya tends to crash again every 7 to 8 minutes. So it's quite frustrating. And at least then you would have a backup. So turn that on. And what else can I give you here? Cameras, the new clip plane. Just put that at 1 for now. Okay. You probably won't understand this for a while, but just leave that at 1 as default. Color management is not important right now. Okay, so another one you can do is files and references. We're going to be referencing a lot of characters into our scenes. It's important to have the allow edit on referenced animation curves on, and allow locking and unlocking edit on referenced attributes on. This just frees up the frustration of selecting a rig and Maya just saying, no, you're not allowed to touch it. You can't do anything. Go away, you can't do anything. This just takes away the frustration. It should be called a nice way to stop frustrated animators by allowing this stuff to happen. There should be a lot more things we could be allowed to do, but the riggers don't like it. So let's go on rendering. Okay, you can choose which renderer you want to be using. You'll probably all be stuck with Arnold anyway. Selection, sometimes I turn off, where was it? I turn off these selection child highlighting. If I'm selecting a piece of geometry, sometimes it will, or a curve, and the geometry is connected in that group, the geometry will be selected too, and it'll stick off, and it's quite annoying. So sometimes I turn that off, or I just use object select highlight settings. Okay, snapping. We don't necessarily need to have snapping. Snapping is just it's a simple thing up here. Snapping is when you move something from one place to another and it snaps to that object. You can find all those settings up here. You can snap to the grid, curves, and other surfaces. Or here you can have it on by default if you want. Okay, time slider, everything is looking good here. We've got our undo as well. I turn my undo on, and of course I like to have a lot of undo options, so I turn it on to infinite undos. GPU cache, don't worry about this for now. You can also settle to automatic if you want, or just leave it as it is. And then just once you're happy with that, save your preferences. Okay, the next thing that we're going to be discussing is actually the hotkeys. Now, I mentioned to you before about opening the graph editor and going, oh, Windows, animation editors, graph editor, and then you close it by mistake, and then you're like, where's the graph editor? And then, oh, it's up here, Windows. So it's a little bit frustrating, understandably. And a lot of animators actually tend to work with a setup where they have perspective and they have Maya underneath the window. What I mean by this is we could go to 2 panes stacked. So what I'm doing here is I'm right clicking over the options for the views. I'm going to 2 panes stacked like this, and then you can turn this one into a panel, and it will be, it's been years and years since I did this, so it'll probably be under panel graph editor. There you go. Now so now what you can do is you can have one window open, and you've got the graph editor that is docked to the bottom of your screen above your timeline. A lot of animators work like this. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of animators that work like this, and when I'm looking at their work or I'm supervising some of their stuff, I find it super frustrating that I can't get to the graph editor and move it around their scenes. So I've never worked like this, and I don't recommend it. I think it does slow down your workflow. So normally I have a single perspective window and the graph editor floating. Now to get it floating, we need to have some hotkeys. So go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and go to Hotkey Editor. Okay. What we're going to do, basically Maya will start off on its default. It'll be Maya default here. And what you want to do is you want to duplicate it, or if there isn't a duplicate there, then you can go to the settings right here and click duplicate. And that will duplicate the Maya default, which are locked. And you can start working on the Maya default duplicate. You can rename this whatever you want. This will now take priority over the default, okay? And we're going to edit categories, edit hotkeys for a category. So we need to choose what we need a hotkey for. So what we want to do is we want to open up a couple of things. We want hotkeys to make our workflow much easier, okay? So what we can do is you can go to edit hotkeys for menu items, not for the editor. Don't get confused with the editor and then go into the graph editor, because inside here, now we're inside that graph editor and all the things that the graph editor does. So we don't want to be doing any fancy things in here just right now. What we want to do is we want to open up the graph editor by editing the hotkeys for the menus. So we're going to go to edit. So the menu items, we're going to go to Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. Now, please bear in mind that if you are starting off, one of the most common keys that people use is actually the key G. And this is to, it's important to either choose an option like Alt and G. Okay. So Alt and G would be really good for you if you wanted to have the hotkey that isn't being used by another one. Okay, so for me, I use the hotkey basically G. I just use G. It is already assigned. Cool. So let's just test that. So let's go to save, and I'm going to just middle mouse on this thing here, and I'm going to press G, and opens up the graph editor. Really, really cool. Don't close this window, you can keep it open. The next one of the most important actual windows is the outliner. So you'd go to Windows Outliner, and this shows you where everything is in your scenes. Okay, so your whole rig, and you've got the hierarchy of your rig in here, and all the different things, all the different connections, and blah blah blah. So for now, I don't want to have that docked to the side here, and you can just drag it away. But if I did that again, Windows Outliner, well, I can dock it here, and Maya tends to dock itself anyway. But I don't want to go to Windows Outliner every time. So I want to go to, again, to Windows, and then there'll be the outliner here, and I'm just going to press O for outliner. If there is already an option, just say yes. Do you want to override the existing hotkey? Yes, I do. And the last one that I use, remember, it's just for me, is the hypershade window. Hypershade where you texture and everything. I just put H in there, and yes. Okay, so graph editor is now G, H, and O. And that's in the rendering editor, hypershade. Settings, preferences, outliner, save. Now so press save, don't close. The next thing that we want to do is we want to go and we want to add a custom script. Okay. Now this is a little bit more complicated, but don't be alarmed. It's just the hotkeys that I will explain to you in a moment. Let me show you. So if I want to hide these NURBS curves by going show NURBS curves and then show NURBS curves, and then I'm animating and then go show and NURBS curves and then go show and then NURBS, you know, I don't want to do that because I will start to go crazy. And again, no thought has been added to animators. So what I want to do is I want to go back into that window. Let's just open it up. And I want to add in a custom script. So what I want to do is I want to go into the runtime command editor tab at the top here. Okay, now in here is where I want to say, okay, this is great. Let's run a script in here to do something fun. Let's go to the short course section, and let me just move this off the screen. Okay, here we go. So in the description below, you should have a link to these three text files. We've got auto tangent, which I'll explain in a moment. We've got the hide NURBS curves. Let me just open that one. Okay, so we've got the hide NURBS curves, and we've got the time slider delete key one. So these are the ones that I've used over the years, and they've been adjusted and tweaked here and there, but they're just very, very helpful. Now these are just proper standard commands in Maya. I'm just creating a hotkey and mapping it to that mal script. So let's start with the hide NURBS curves in the viewport. Let's select, so open that one, select from the bottom up to the top of where it says string, press Control C. And we're going to go and we're going to create a new runtime command, new, and it's going to be in the language of Mel. Okay, so here in this language, Mel, not Python, we are going to paste in that code in here. Okay, and I'm going to give it a name, so I'm going to give it, let's say, hide NURBS curves. Okay, and it's in the category of custom scripts. Okay, so in the custom scripts section, that's where it's going to be. And then I'm going to save the runtime command. The runtime must begin with a, okay, sorry. So let's do under small letters, so hide NURBS curves and save run command. There we go. So what I did is I just kept it all in lowercase. And here's the hide NURBS curves command, and basically I'm going to use the hotkey Alt and C. Alt and C. Okay, so it's already assigned to hide curves. Name command. Do you want to add it to your? Yes, you do. Okay, so that one's done. Let's just save and let's just check that it's working in the viewport. So if I have a a NURBS curve of any kind. I press Alt C and it's working perfectly. You can test this by just creating, you can go to create NURBS primitives and create a circle on the floor. Okay, and let's make that bigger. And you can test that by, let's go into wireframe, press Alt C, and you'll see that it's hiding that curve, which is the controller. You can delete now, don't need that. Cool. The next one we're going to do is to do auto tangents. Now an auto tangent, let me explain this one to you. I hope this one works. It didn't work earlier. I'm going to open up my graph editor with the curve quickly. And let's say I have a curve. Okay, let's say I've selected this handle and I'm middle mouse W mode, and it's wiggly, so it's all messed up like this, and I want to fix that tangent. What I would do is select that keyframe and I would go up and auto spline that tangent back. Okay, using both pretty much does the same thing. Spline and auto spline, auto tangent, spline tangent. So when I'm working with lots of different things, I don't want to be over here and then go, oh, I have to go back and back again, back and back, back. So I have a hotkey for this, and it's going to really help you in the future. So here what we want to do is we want to create, again, we're going to go to custom scripts, and we're going to create a new one. This one is going to be called auto tangent. If you want to put an underscore there, please be my guest. And then we're going to copy in the auto tangent, key tangent, spline, not spline, something. Say runtime command. It's been saved. And with the auto tangent one, I normally have this set to Alt W. Okay. So that's set to that. And then the last one, we'll run through the last one now. We'll create a new one, and we're going to call it delete keys on time slider. This one is super cool. It's one of my favorites. So I'm going to call it time slider delete key. Okay. And then I'll paste it in here as a mel script. Make sure it's in mel, not in Python. And I've copied and pasted the time slider key one in here. Remember, that's in that time slider key notepad. Copy that. Paste it in here, save runtime command, and this one is Alt D. Okay, yes. And save and close. Now, let's see what's happened. So we've got our amazing animation by myself, of course. And the character is in the animation is there, but on the time slider, let's say I wanted to delete this keyframe here in the graph editor. I wanted to delete it on the time slider. What I'd have to do is I'd have to right click and go up and delete. And when I'm working fast, I don't want to by any mistake press paste or copy or cut or snap. So I'd have to delete that key. The other way to do it would be in the graph editor and to go there and go edit, delete. Okay, you can again see how frustrating and boring that becomes, and lethargic and rubbish it becomes. So what we want to do now is use our hotkey. Bang, gone. Bang, gone. So what I'm doing is I've got the hotkey of Alt and D, and I'm just going over the area that I want to delete on the time slider or in the graph. And even I could drag and select this area and press Alt D, and it will delete all those keys. And on the time slider. So that's very handy for an animator. The Alt C, remember, is to hide the curves in the graph editor, and Alt D for hiding the time slider keys. The auto tangent, this is the one where the tangents themselves, if they're wiggly or not behaving, and you select that and press Alt W, they will go back to to a much nicer tangent handle, and it will follow a nicer curve. You could really mess up your scene quite a bit. There could be all sorts of things going on. And again, you could select that area and just press Alt W, and it will bring it into a really nice curve again. And that's it, I guess. That's it for the animation setup. Basically, that's how I would work, how I would start my animation. I would normally have 120 frames by default. And what else would I normally do? Oh, just a handy hint. Showing none, then showing just your polygons, and then have the NURBS curves on, speeds up your playback on your viewport in Maya 2.0. Because again, animators are not thought about, so you can obviously feel my frustration. And one thing that you do want to do when you're playblasting out your animation is you want to go up here into the settings of your of Maya, up here into the render settings. If you can't see it, just expand that menu, press this one. Here. Take forever, and then render settings open. You're not really interested in rendering per se, but what you are interested in is playblasting your scene. So to playblast your scene, just make sure that your preset for the image size is set to something higher than 540 by default. So normally I'm at HD 720 when I do some playblasts. A playblast is basically you right click on your time slider and you playblast, and that will create a little QuickTime movie of your animation, and you can sort of play that back wherever you are. Okay, but this, now that it's playblasting at full HD, or HD, not full HD, 720. So you can change that, and it will change your settings how you want. Remember, you can right click on it, click the little button next to it, those boxes, and you can go into the settings of your codecs. Okay, and that's it. So when I keyframe, normally I set a keyframe down. You can have hotkeys to key just the Alt and the Y, the X, the translations and the rotations. But I normally just work with set to set the keyframe on everything, and then I come back and I clean it up in the graph editor later. Please remember that that is my own personal choice of how I work. This is not meant to say you have to be like me and you have to work in this way, but this is how I have worked over the years, and it has proved quite successful. So yes, and if there are any questions about it, please get in touch with me and let me know, and I hope you found this pretty useful. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.